Ireland for good, or are we talking about the first time I actually left the country to go working?
Well, I think let's talk about the first time you left to go working, because did you leave to go working because there was no work in Ireland?
That really wasn't it. I was actually studying languages, so I took a year out to first go to Germany. That was my first experience abroad. And I did the same again for going to France and again for going to Germany. So I left during my studies on occasion 3 different times.
Okay.
I probably would have had to go anyway, sub to some other country during that period between the 80s and early 90s, simply because I wouldn't have found summer work in Ireland, or I wouldn't have found work anyway. It was very difficult to get work in the years that I actually did stay.
Okay, so we're talking about now the years that you did go abroad during your study years. That would be 1988?
The first time I went off was at 1988 to 1989.
Yep.
And then I did another round in 1990 to 1991. That was in France, and I did another year. I'm just trying to think. I know I did another small stint in Germany somewhere in between. I actually can't remember the exact dates. It's just been so long ago.
Yeah. The last time that you left was the time that you basically, after leaving from Dublin, that was when you went for good.
I did, yes. I went in 2001.
2001. And that's significant because that was when the Celtic Tiger was at its peak. So
yeah, I know. A lot of people find that interesting and ask me why I left Ireland in the middle of its so-called peak. I say so-called. I did try to get a job in Ireland before I left. I tried to get a good job. People say also to find a good job. A good job to me is where you're actually paid what you're worth. And I found in Ireland, no offense to the Irish people, you were never ever paid what you were worth. And I think that's the case. 20 years ago, 30 years, I'd say it's still the case today.
Yeah. So 10 years ago.
That's right, yeah. It'll be my anniversary. I came over, I started working here on the 1st of September. I think arrived here on the 27th of August.
And what,
here being Germany.
Were you teaching then? You were teaching in, what was your qualifications then? Because I know that you taught languages at high school level, was it, for a while?
That's right. When I first left university, I got a job in a convent of mercy. I kind of ended up back where I started in a Thai, teaching in a group of girls, teaching French and German. I then moved on to a technical school in Dundalk, just south of the Northern Irish border. Very interesting school and radically different from the religious schools that I had first of all attended myself, and also different to the ones I had taught them before as well.
Right.
And I stayed there for 6 or 7 years. I wanted to do something different, not just remain in the school system. I mean, after all, I was brought up in the school system, went to the school system and stayed in it to teach in it afterwards, so I decided I wanted to do something different and took a career break. And I ended up working for a VAT reclaim company in Dublin just for a year in Tama. And whilst I was there, I decided I wanted to go further afield.
Okay, now
I had a look around for jobs in Ireland.
Okay, let me just clarify something there. A VAT paying company. What was that?
It's a VAT reclaiming company. It was reclaimed VAT for you. So if you as a company or you as a person paid a lot of money and you were entitled to reclaim the VAT, this is a company that assisted you in doing that.
Okay.
So I essentially worked in what some people I guess would call a call centre. It was a little bit more than that because it was required that we actually integrate with customers and be able to look after particular accounts. So I did that for just a year.
Okay.
And I did look for other jobs, and I happened to find a job on the internet for a software company then in Germany as a translator.
Okay.
And that was my next move then. So I went from teacher to, well, let me see, account assistant, I guess it would have been, or key account manager, to a translator. And I have since moved on. I'm now a technical writer.
So, right, so you've had a... So you've actually been in four different careers, from teacher to account manager to translator, and now
technical writer. Yeah.
Technical writer. Okay. Wow.
Well, I don't think I would have been able to do that in Ireland, actually. I think the only place I could go, skills that I had, even though, I mean, obviously teaching requires a lot of skills. You have to be able to manage people, have to be able to plan things, have to be able to organise things. It's actually quite a difficult job to do, but again, the skill set's not exactly valued when you go elsewhere.
Yeah. Good point. When you did leave, Veronica, and that was in 2001, when you left for good, who took you to the airport?
Sorry, so that is
when you did leave in 2001, who took you to the airport trying to get a little human interest story here now.
Well, believe it or not, actually, I headed off in my car. I knew it was going to go for good, pretty much. Well, I knew it was going to be going. I'd taken a career break. I knew it was going to be going for at least 3 or 4 years. So I packed everything into my car, and I hit off for first of all, Dublin. I wanted to go to Dublin for travel from Dublin to England, from England to France, and then France over to Germany. That was my plan.
Okay.
When I actually got to the port, broken down. I couldn't get a ferry from Dublin. I couldn't get a ferry from the south of Ireland. So I went up to the north of Ireland, drove from the north of Ireland to Stranraer out to Dover, and then Dover across to Calais.
Wow.
That's how I escaped Ireland.
Wow, that's how I escaped Ireland.
By myself.
So you were taking your car with you. So the interesting thing is, you were you're the challenge to the rule. You're the only one that basically, I guess, had a car, had a job, had a house, and you decided it wasn't, Ireland was halting you, right? Is that how you felt?
Yeah, that was it. I was fed up. I was fed up with my life anyway, as it happened. I had been married, things weren't working out with us, and I decided. First of all, I had to take in this job change as a sanitary cleaning person, and I thought, right, I'd do that and see if it made a difference. And I realised I was getting unhappier and happier, and I decided to go the next step and just leave. Yeah. And that's why I still had my car, my house. I even had a job in Ireland when I left.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. But that has always been me. I like building safety nets.
Was it emotional for you, Veronica? I mean, the leaving itself, was it emotional, or were you already over it? You wanted to leave?
I wanted to leave. It was emotional leaving. I did at the time think that I was going to go back to my teaching job. Because, as you well know, teaching jobs in Ireland, when you have a permanent position, which I did have, you don't usually use them that easily. Mm. And I just thought, well, I'd already taken one of my years of the career break. You're entitled to 5, so I knew I had another 4 years to sort of get my act together. And I was also only 31. At the time I thought it was old, of course now, at the age of 41, 31 is nothing. Yeah. So I actually still had the whole life ahead of me, and I still had a lot of options. Yeah. You know? Yeah. So I decided, I was going to give this I was going to give it a go for at least 2 years, because I didn't want to go job hopping. It wasn't something I'd ever really done. It had been instilled into me that one did take on a job and stick at it for as long as one could. Yeah, yeah. I still believe in that today. You can't just keep jumping around, even though things have changed an awful lot today. Yeah.
Now, the interesting part of it is where did you immigrate to?
I emigrated to a nice town in the south of Germany, or a nice city, in fact, called Heidelberg.
Beautiful.
And a little village just south of Heidelberg, to be very precise. Okay. And where the weather was good, the beer was good, and so was the wine. The people are relatively friendly. Yeah. And I got, what I still consider today to be a very, very good job. Yeah. With a lot of benefits, a lot of perks. Yeah. And those benefits and perks kept me going as well for the next 2 years, because I was earning pretty good money. Yeah. In Ireland back at the time, I reckon I had started amassing a lot of debts even back then, because even though teaching is relatively well paid to a lot of other jobs in Ireland, it still wasn't enough. I had to travel an awful lot to get to work. I lived in Dublin, but I worked in Dundalk. It was a 100-mile round trip every day. That cost a fortune in petrol. You can't claim that money back on tax, or at least you couldn't at the time. I don't know if the rules have changed. So whilst I had been spending 20 or 30 pounds getting to their work, I was spending something like 200 every month just getting to and from work. Yeah. And as I said, the money even back then, it wasn't that good. They got a lot of pay rises as it turned out once I left, which have since been taken straight back off of them. Yeah. Since the recession has hit Ireland in the last 2 years again, the teachers have lost out on a lot of money, which I think is a shame, to be honest. Yeah, so, I was kind of happy where I ended up, I have to say. Even the weather was more cheerful than it was in Ireland.
Yeah. So, why did you choose Germany?
What led me to choose Germany?
Yeah, well, because I'm thinking you were telling me that you drove to the north of Ireland and then took the ferry to Dover. What made you go that roundabout route, and why did you, so you were trained in Germany?
Yeah, I was trained in Germany. I actually always, funnily enough, even when I was growing up, and even when I was going to school, I'd always wanted to learn German. I didn't get to learn it until I got to university in Gold. It was one of the few universities that actually allowed you to learn it from scratch if you hadn't learned it at school. Yeah. I actually since found out from my mum I was in London when I grew up in London. That she had a childminder who might have been German, who presumably actually talked to me in German. I just never realised. That might have been where the actual interest in the language had come from.
Right.
But once I got to university, I decided I would study it, and I always had the country was the first country I ever went to abroad to. I also did quite well there. I managed to find my way and not die. And I headed off over alone with two other girls. We went camping in Munich, managed to survive all of that. So I always had an affinity for the country because I had always managed to make my way there, even when I was younger.
Yeah, very, very good.
The reason I took such a long roundabout route, I suppose it is a little bit weird. I mean, true enough, the ferry had broken down from Dublin to England, which certainly was true. I could have waited until the next day, but the fact was I was actually desperate to leave. So I drove to Northern Ireland to make sure I got to leave on the day I wanted to go.
And you were desperate to leave, but the car, well, it was important that you brought the car with you.
Yeah, I always needed my mobility. That's why I drove up that way. I mean, I needed it once I got over to Germany, even though it possibly would have been cheaper to buy a car over there. I just wanted to get the car and go over there.
Yeah.
And just be able to travel around to do my own thing.
Yeah.
So a car has always been an element of freedom for me. I wouldn't be without a car.
Yeah. Were conditions better or worse for you in Germany than Ireland?
Were conditions worse for me?
Better or worse?
They were a lot better for me. The only thing that would have been worse was I was obviously living in a house, and I ended up in a 2-room apartment in this little village. But that's pretty much the way everybody lives here, certainly to start off with anyway. Everybody has apartments. Apartment life is the norm. I found that difficult. I was used to having a house with, I think, 4 bedrooms to wander around in and to call my own. So that was the only difficulty. Everything else was easy because it was so much cheaper in Germany and I was paid so much more. True enough, we had taxes and all of that, but things like health insurance, all other kinds of benefits, bonuses and stuff that I'd never had when I was a teacher, for example, it just made my life an awful lot easier.
Yeah. Would you ever consider going back to Ireland?
I don't think so. I've often thought about it, but there's a lot of things I don't like about Ireland anymore. I love the people. I think the people are pretty much the best people you can meet anywhere. But I found, especially I noticed that through the Celtic Tiger, there was a greedy element that emerged when the Celtic Tiger got going. Mm-hmm. And it was clear to me as well that when I left the country, I did not like the way the government dealt with the people at all. I felt that the Irish people were being cheated. Yeah. I always have to. I still do feel like that, even though I know that they're forced at this stage to make decisions that are not particularly popular. I've never had a problem with governments making unpopular decisions, but I've often wondered who's gaining from the decisions that they make. Yeah. And I feel at the time, certainly when I was in Ireland, I mean, the tax that I was paying with the wages that I earned was nothing short of scandalous. I was glad that they actually reduced taxes. Yeah. Unfortunately, when I left, I thought that the amount of money that teachers were earning was an absolute scandal as well when you consider the job that they actually had to do. Look after people from 9 until 4 o'clock and expect to do absolutely everything for them. Yeah. And I never had time, except for the summer holidays. I mean, honestly, it's just it's nearly a 24-hour job because you're either always teaching or preparing stuff or even doing stuff with kids at the weekends because you often give up your free time just to make sure that things worked. So I just found, I guess I wouldn't go back to Ireland because I also see there's too many benefits that I profit from here, or I benefit from here in this country. That's one of the bigger reasons I wouldn't go back. Yeah. And the weather would actually stop me from going back. I mean, my God, you remember Galway? It poured rain morning, noon and night.
It did. It did.
I'm not used to getting rained on anymore.
Yeah, it did. Oh, Lord, the hailstones when you'd cycle out to Salt Hill to do the final exams.
Yeah, I do remember lots of wonderful things about Ireland as well. I mean, there was a lot of good things, especially when I was a student, you know. The educational system I found in Ireland was very, very good. It's not too bad here in Germany. I found it in Ireland to be particularly